Hey there, all you creepers and reapers. Welcome to another episode of the Femme Fatalities. I'm your co-hostess, Anna, and I'm here with...
Hey, all you grieflings and frightlings, it's Margaret and Anna. What movie are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to take a little trip and head straight into the DC universe. That's
Oh,
right, we're going to be talking about Joker today. We're talking about the recent one that Joaquin Phoenix is in, playing none other than Arthur Fleck. And I cannot wait to crack it open and dive right in. How about you, Margaret?
ooh, yes. Let's dive into the mind of Arthur Fleck and the DC universe and the insanity of the Joker.
And sometimes he does just clown around. But
Yes.
all right, guys. So make sure you take a little bit of water out of your flower on your lapel. Take those big uncomfy shoes off and wash that pan makeup off of your face before you settle in for a nice cup of hot clown cocoa and have a listen.
Yes, join us. So, trigger warnings if you haven't watched the movie or you're listening to this cast, there is violence. There is there's a lot of violence. There is also civil unrest. There is mother-son relationships, community relationships. And this is a huge movie that delves into mental health, so it can be a trigger for a lot of people, whether you're dealing with mental health or just the reflection. Correct me, Anna, if you disagree with how this movie really does reflect the plight of some of our most vulnerable members of society, those that are struggling with managing their mental health.
I completely agree. I think it's a huge comment on society. We'll be talking about that throughout this cast. Another thing, there's a lot of socioeconomic commentary as well.
Mhm.
And I think that that is something that is very valid, especially this day and age. And certainly, if any of these items trigger you, you may want to move on to the next cast. If it's something that interests you, please stay tuned. There's a lot to talk about. If you've seen the movie and you've connected with it, I certainly hope that you find what we're talking about to be very valuable as well. Also, if you are struggling with your mental health and you do not feel like you have the appropriate proper supports, there are supports and services out there for you. Please feel free to message us, email us, DM us. We can refer you to organizations and agencies that might be closer to you. You can also contact your local resource center as well. Margaret is very well aware of many online services also. Margaret, can you name a few of those?
Actually, I was going to say, if you're listening right now, jot down this number, put it in your phone, 988. You can call or text it. That is the National Suicide Prevention Line. And then a lot of states have their own crisis line or crisis services. I wish I could give you more information. However, they do vary from state to state. I know in Colorado, we have a crisis line. I used to work on it. And so we answered for the national line as well as the Colorado line. And we have walk in clinics here. So if you are in Colorado and you're experiencing a mental health crisis, call 988 and they can send you to a walk in clinic, which is staffed with mental health professionals that are more capable to address your mental health needs. Otherwise, if you're in a rural place, maybe Anna knows of some resources in her area, call 988. They are trained professionals that are going to be able to support you.
Definitely. And where I am in Maryland, we also have the walk-in clinic option. Margaret, you're absolutely right about 988. I can tell you that there is, and Margaret knows as well because she used to work in the field. Everyone is extensively trained. They are there to help you and assist you. They are not there to provide any suggestions on how to quote unquote solve your problem. They truly are there to listen and help you find resources that will lead you to doing the work and making your way successfully in terms of how you define that to the next step. and the next moment, and hopefully brighter days and days that are more fulfilling to you.
And just piggybacking off of that, listeners, I hear often the fear of being committed due to suicidal or homicidal ideations. The field, I can say it's growing in its awareness of how to assess and then how to take care of people. Sadly, in the field, people, they want to protect your life and other people's lives. So a lot of professionals will err on the side of caution and put you on a hold. Here in Colorado, we have a 72-hour mental health hold. Talk to your clinicians, talk to the people you're working with, because they're trying to assess, are you safe for yourself? Are you safe for the world? Because it can be terrifying. And even through Joker, we'll see where the mental health system failed him. His therapist was not tuned in, wasn't checking in if he was having suicidal ideations, homicidal ideations, and where she could actually intervene. I think Anna would agree. There are points in this film where Joker would not have gone on his homicidal rage or delved into homicide if there had been other outlets for him. Instead, the world kept kicking him, and nobody was there to help him up.
Right. And I have to say, I truly enjoy the movie. I think the statement it makes is phenomenal. But as Margaret said, opposed to waking up and saying, fuck the world, violence is the answer. We want to make sure if you're listening to this and you're having a hard time, you can wake up and you can say, fuck the world. I'm going to do what I need to do to support myself and do the work and improve my own situation so that I have the best quality of life and I'm surrounded by positivity and I am living the best life I can. And that's really what we hope for any of you that are struggling right now. And honestly, anyone who's not struggling, like, everyone is entitled to live their best life. Like, put the work in, look for resources, do what you need to do to get to that point and optimize what is going on in terms of your lifestyle, the supports you're getting, the services that you're taking advantage of.
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. And if you're afraid, again, because what we're touching on is big stuff of seeking that help, 988, you can remain anonymous. So if you're like, I don't want to be locked up, I don't want to be put on a hold, I don't want somebody to know who I am because of my profession. There's a lot of reasons that keep us from identifying ourselves, especially when we're struggling with our mental health. You can remain anonymous. They're there to help you, to give you the tools so that, as Anna's saying, you can live your best life. You can wake up and maybe you're like, fuck the world today. I'm going to do these things to advocate for myself, for my mental health, to make my life better.
Definitely. And I have to say, I'm gonna paraphrase my dad. He used to always tell me this, and he's right. The only person in this world that you can consistently count on is yourself. So you have to take care of yourself.
Yes. Take care of yourself, physical, mental, emotional health.
Yes.
And I think Anna would agree, Joker really does just conceptualize that beautifully. Like, Arthur starts, he loves his job. He believes he was meant to make people laugh. That's what he's here for. And again, his job just keeps kicking him. He has asshole coworkers, greedy people that don't understand him. And so he just keeps going lower and lower. And how many of us can relate to, I love my work, and yet it's sucking the soul out of me because of capitalism or my coworkers or a toxic work environment. And then our mental health continues to degrade.
It will. And honestly, if you are struggling in your profession, I can attest to having been in kind of one of those soul-sucking corporate positions that deeply impacted me to the point where I was bringing it home, and that's something I had no desire to do. And now, of course, I love what I'm doing here with the podcast and with Margaret, which is pretty obvious if you're listening. But my full-time gig, it's amazing. I have amazing colleagues. Our leadership team is amazing. Our clients are wonderful. So just know there are great fits out there for you, and you have every right to find them. If you look consistently, eventually you will find something that hopefully fulfills more of your hopes for what a position is. We spend like a third of our lives at work. You might as well make sure that third of your life is happy.
Amen. And Anna is blessed to have a job that she loves. I work as well in a job that I love. And so, again, not to sound like a broken record, if you are in a toxic work environment or you feel trapped in your work environment, whether that's educational limits, we could go into socioeconomics and how oftentimes we're stuck at a job that doesn't pay well because we have to pay our bills. So then we can't get the education or we can't switch jobs. Prioritize your mental health so that third of your life that is toxic or soul sucking, you have the tools so it doesn't bleed into the rest of your life. And you can say, okay, I hate my job
Mm-hmm.
and this is how I'm dealing with it. Because for so many Americans, they are so trapped in jobs that aren't fulfilling, that are toxic, and they don't see that they have a way out of these. And as we talk about grief, which you know Anna and I are about, there is grief when we are in a career
Yeah.
that doesn't fulfill us, a job that doesn't fulfill us, and that hopelessness that comes with, well, I have to pay my rent, I have to feed my family. So I have to
Mm-hmm.
go to this job. I have no other choice. There's grief in that. When we're kids,
Yeah.
we're like, I'm going to grow up, I'm going to be whatever. And then we become adults. And for a lot of us, we're like, oh, yeah, as a kid, I want to be this, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
actually just this now.
Right. And the other thing too is like, don't just identify who you are through what you do for a living, because every single person out there is so much more than what they do from 9 to 5 or whatever your working hours are, 3 to midnight, second, third shift, whatever you work. You're more than that. You're more than punching a clock. You're more than answering a phone. You're more than an Excel spreadsheet. And don't forget that either.
Yes, you are. And I guess we could say that Arthur actually does, in a way, illuminate, because he's meant to be a clown. Like, that's what
Mm-hmm.
he wants to do. And then his grief, and that he has this gift, and he's so misunderstood. He just wants to make people smile. And we can, that when he's on the bus, it's the bus or the subway, and there's the cute little kid, and he's like playing, and the mom is like, don't you look at my son, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Like, how often we're just trying to shine our light, and then there's
Yeah.
other people like, you're too bright, don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. And it's just kind of, how do we, I mean, in an ideal utopia type situation, we would all love each other and respect each other for our differences and care about each other. But that's sadly not the reality we live in, especially in Western society. So how do we, prepare ourselves to combat the negative responses of others, right? That you don't have to say anything back. You don't have to behave in a negative manner, but you have to know who you are and realize that someone else's opinion of you is related to their own reality, not who you are as a person.
Anna, would you agree that as we're looking at society and how society impacts people, that we can see Arthur slowly, just society
Mm-hmm.
grading on him. He keeps trying that opening scene where the kid still his sign,
Yeah.
and then they beat him up. And then later on in the film, his boss is upset and like, well, we have to penalize you because you stole the
Mm-hmm.
sign. And poor Arthur's like, why would I steal a sign? Like, the sign was stolen from me. And just
Yeah.
how he keeps fighting
Mm-hmm.
and the world just
Oh,
pushes
yeah.
back.
Yeah, he does. And I empathize a lot with Arthur throughout the
Mm-hmm.
entire film. He consistently gets shit on. Like, there's no nice way to say it. He does. And it sucks because here we are. We have this man who also is taking care of his mother, right? So, from a caregiving perspective, the larger percentage of caregivers to their parents or grandparents or family members are typically female, right? So we're taking someone and he's taking on a role that is more difficult to give support to men and find male supports for to begin with. So if you're masculine facing and you're a caregiver for a loved one, there are supports out there, just so you know. A lot of local hospices can lead you to the correct direction, whether or not it is hospice care. But that's very difficult too. It's not having anyone to talk to or relate to with what you're going through individually as a caregiver. So, of course, that's weighing on him, I believe, intensely. And the other thing is, I think we all have some form of escapism, especially when we're going through a hard time or something difficult has happened to us. I mean, how often do you find yourself like driving somewhere or like walking through the grocery store or doing something and totally just daydreaming? You know, we all have a form of escapism, and that it's normal. But when it gets to the point where the escapism starts to take over your entire life, that's really when we have to take a closer look at things.
And you touch on some really great things there. One, his mother, and I want to explore this in a minute when I get to my second point, and I want your opinion too.
Mm-hmm.
The question of could she have groomed him to be her caretaker, because we know later in the film that she's mentally ill. She has a narcissistic
Mm-hmm.
personality. And so that would make you wonder, was Arthur groomed
Yeah.
to be mama's little boy? And second of all, as you were talking about how we escape fantasies, very natural ways we deal with the world. Another way the system fails Arthur is he has a caseworker.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly she's overworked, she's burnt out, she's not even present in his sessions, and she's missing these opportune moments because he's like, do you listen to me? Like, she could have been able to take what Arthur is saying and turn those into ways to help him so he wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
digressed as much as he did. He would have had the tools to use his fantasies, his daydreams, his jokes as a way to cope with the world, instead of, again, here he's
Yeah.
sharing with his therapist, and even when she's flipping through his journal, she's like, you can tell she's a little taken back.
Mm-hmm.
There were these opportunities that he could have gained support that he didn't.
Yeah. And I agree with you totally. I mean, I think that if, you know, his therapist, when she was taken aback, she could have referred him to someone else. Or she could have spoken to her own counselor or therapist. For anyone out there who's a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist, and you have your own counselor, that is totally healthy. We all have to check in on ourselves if we're going to be of any service to anyone else. So, more power to you. Thumbs up for me. Um, and the other thing, too, is just if a client is not the right fit, like empower yourself and empower them to get them the help that they actually need.
And I think you touch on something really critical in our mental health system as a mental health worker. Sadly, in community mental health, I've worked there. You don't get to choose your clientele. They don't get to choose you. You get assigned. And so even if you're not the right fit, you can't refer them out because the system is so taxed. So here again, Arthur and his therapist are caught in a system that
Mm-hmm.
she might not be the right fit, but because I'm guessing it's community mental health because she says the funding gets cut, she can't refer him. And so this disservice we do to the clinicians, the mental health workers, as well as people who need services, that if you are in community mental health, and listeners, if you're in a state that your system is different, please share with us because I would love to hear about this. But often we go in, we get assigned a therapist, they're already burnt out,
Mm-hmm.
they have a massive caseload that they can't manage. And so they're just checking the boxes, and then you're missing out. And not to slam community mental health workers, because so many of them are brilliant and
Mm-hmm.
wonderful, and I've worked with so many amazing people that still tried to show up and do their best work, whether they were the right fit or not the right fit, that they really wanted to show up and make a difference. So I just want to applaud those on the front line that are forced to do a really hard job and are able to do it and still treat people like they're humans.
Totally. And it's, sometimes it's the system that's not working. And
Yeah.
that's impacts everything else. It's the iceberg effect. And a lot of you know that I have a very strong business background, but that is the iceberg effect. The system is what you don't see above the water. That's everything underneath the water that's really causing many of the other issues and a lot of the difficulty for all parties involved.
Yes. And then who suffers? Arthur, his
Mhm.
clinician,
Yeah.
the people in the system, the workers and the people they're doing their best to support, because the
Mhm.
system isn't geared to, yeah. Our mental health system needs a complete overhaul, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's comparatively speaking, if we look back at like Geraldo Rivera's expose, right? We've come leaps and bounds from that. And hopefully in another 50 years, people will look back. Margaret and I will be living it up and partying in the retirement home, and we're going to look back and say, wow, look at how far things have come. And hopefully it'll be for the positive and the better.
Yes.
Yeah, totally. And one thing I do want to ask you about, Margaret, is the scene where the drunk guys get on the train, right? And Arthur's just there, like minding his own business, and they start accosting the young lady. My immediate response, which I saw the movie in theaters the very first time, I've watched it countless times after, but um, my immediate response was, "Oh my God, these guys are jerks. Someone is going to get hurt."
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? And it speaks so much to privilege. And I think, for me, not the fact that one of the death part happened, but the fact that someone stood up to them, it was very um almost ingratiating for the audience. And I really think that the film speaks a lot to privilege as well. Arthur even says, like, if it would have been me dying on the street, no one would care.
Yes, I think you touch on that. Yes, privilege. There's these three Wall Street guys, so they have the privilege. They already feel entitled. They're starting to harass this young woman. So
Mhm.
as audiences, we're like, oh my gosh, this is not gonna go well. And I feel like our author really reflects as an audience if we were on that subway,
Mhm.
seeing somebody and wanting to help, and you can see his fear. He wants to help. He doesn't
Yeah.
know how. Can he help? Will he help? In
Mhm.
a way, I feel that his mental health condition, the laughing, is actually he's uncomfortable, so he
Oh
starts to
yeah,
laugh. So
his anxiety.
pull, yeah, he pulls the attention away. And
Mhm.
as a society, how often are we there where we're seeing somebody
Mhm.
caught in a situation and our survival brain kicks in? We're weighing the odds. If I step in, do I
Mhm.
get hurt? Do you get hurt? Can I live with like all these things that go through
Yeah.
our mind? An author is actually able to step in. I don't
Mhm.
know if he did it intentionally or just his own anxiety pulled that attention
Right.
away from her. We know he wants to help. He just doesn't. No,
Mhm.
there's these three entitled men that
Yeah.
we know they're gonna,
Be creepy.
they assault her, they
Yes.
beat him up, they're going off
Yeah,
scot free.
they're fine. They'll just
Mhm.
get a really, like, expensive lawyer and they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's
So it
sad.
doesn't matter. I'm
Yeah.
here, you're here, the lady's here,
Mhm.
author's here, so these men can do.
Yeah.
And that's another reflection of our systems and our society.
Mhm.
The wealthier you are, the more privileged you are, the more whatever it is that you go, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I can do this because you're
Yeah.
in a clown outfit, you're a woman, you're
Mhm.
whatever. So I actually have more
Yeah.
power and privilege over you.
Yeah. It's just and it's even, like, it's just crazy because it's like the more privileged you are, the less disposable you are, um, which is sickening. And it's the thing is too, even if we look at when Arthur, now Joker, is on Murray's show, um, and he's trying to express himself. And of course, Murray gets super defensive and he's like, well, you don't know a thing about me. That's a prime example. We have someone else who's privileged. They have their own TV show. They're famous. Um, they get their kicks off of making fun of other people, to some extent, right? Instead of trying to hear someone else out, it's immediately, you don't agree with me. I don't have the opinion that you have. So you're offending me and I'm going to get defensive.
I think you touched on something great about Murray and our society capitalizing off of other people's pain, other people's suffering. I don't get the sense that that's how author wanted to become known. He wanted to be on this show, but here's this embarrassing video that's put out to the world about him.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And it's amazing because I think that, the whole some people are just awful quote, um, for me really resonated because it is, not everyone you encounter in life is going to be empathetic. Not everyone is going to be kind. Not everyone is going to care. Right. So we know this. This is a fact. This is an adult reality. Um, this is not something that I can fix on an individual level. I can't make everyone nice. I wish I could. I really do. And if I had some kind of superpower, it would be uh, to instill caring and love into everyone, for everyone else. But I'm still waiting on my mutant powers. They haven't kicked in yet, and it's just very poignant, even though it is a very brief statement.
Yeah, that very brief statement. And even in all of this, how author's pain is used to entertain people. Out of
Mhm.
that, he becomes a hero. How often are we looking for that person that we're like, oh my gosh, like I relate to you because
Yeah.
you're one of the underdogs. Like me,
Hmm.
you're one of the people that doesn't get the privilege, like the three
Yeah.
guys. Like he kills those three guys, and then all of a sudden people are like,
Mm.
that is our hero.
Yep.
He's going against
Yeah. He's going
the
against
societal
society.
norm that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, in a sense, he becomes an anarchist.
Hmm. Yes, he does
Mhm.
completely.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I have to say, I really, out of all of the versions of Joker, Arthur Fleck is my favorite because you learn so much more about his character. And I don't know if it's because, well, I saw it before I was a thanatologist, but just always being drawn into mental health and grief and loss and life experience and those sorts of things. And um, being I hope I'm, I'm half as compassionate as I think I am towards others. So this movie really drew me in, um, because I think that there's such a character dynamic between the viewer and Arthur. And that's something very rare in film.
Oh, yes. He pulls on your heartstrings. He draws you in. You have all the, he's like that stray puppy that has had a really hard life, or even the stray dog. You just want to take him in. You want to take care of him. And sadly, he lives in a society that's like stray dogs. Get
Mhm.
out of here. You ruin our society. And as a thanatologist, this movie is amazing. And there's
Yeah.
a line in there where he says, I hope my death makes more sense than my life. And as
Yeah.
a thanatologist, I was like, this is what thanatology is about. How through death we make sense of life. And that we could look at that as a point where the Joker is being born. How through death
Mhm.
do we make sense of life? And
Oh, yeah.
that is, would you agree that that's where he's like, okay, I'm using
Mhm.
death to help people understand life?
Yeah. Oh, totally. And I mean, even in a broad scope and sense of that, how many people have ever come close to, you know, heading into the void, shall we say, but didn't go? And then it changes your perspective on life, and it also changes probably the perspective of other people around you.
Thank you for like mentioning that, like through author, like we see him skirting the lines of reality and
Mm-hmm.
madness and sanity, and how in our society we don't honor that. We don't
Yeah.
allow people to really be like, I'm really struggling with my mental health. I'm really
Mm-hmm.
struggling with my version of reality. I am really, and so for
Mm-hmm.
so many of us, I know there's people out there that are going to say, I have never. So many of us, though, are like, my reality, I'm really struggling
Yeah.
right now. And I just want to normalize that as part of life where we're like,
Mm-hmm.
my mental health is not in a good place and
Yeah.
I'm struggling. I'm on the line. And author shows us like
Mm-hmm.
what happens when you cross that line. And I don't know about you, Anna, but I would argue I could see why he crosses that line through this movie. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
he has no other options because he's either going to be
Yeah.
murdered by somebody or he's going to become the
Right.
anti-establishment hero
Mm-hmm.
that he is.
Yeah. Well, and one thing that really stands out to me from the movie too is when the two colleagues come to his apartment and he kills the one guy because he was cruel to Arthur and he set him up. But he lets his other previous, like, former colleague go. And he said, "You've always been nice to me. You never did anything against me," right? And I think it's really important to mention too when we are going through crises, whether it's something external impacting us or something internal that's affecting us, the people that have always been kind to you and treated you with respect and showed care towards you, those are your safe friends. Hang on to those people and focus on those people. There are always going to be people that are naysayers. There are going to be people that do not emotionally support you. There are going to be people that treat you like something's wrong with you, and that's on them. That's not on you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and that not, as Anna's saying, not to internalize that. Author's showing us, like, this guy, you've always been nice to me. I'm going to let you go. And even you can check with those friends. Hey, I'm in a bad space. Are you in a space
Mm-hmm.
to provide me support? Because maybe they're in a bad space too. And they're like,
Yeah.
we're both on the edge right now, so I can't support you. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, like, we're both on the edge. Shall we go watch a movie? Shall we do something? And that's not against you. That's when somebody's saying,
Yeah.
I don't have what you want. I often use the example, if I ask Anna for $1,000,000 and she doesn't have it, she doesn't have it. It's the
Yeah.
same with asking for support for anything. It's okay if somebody goes, I don't have it, because there's I don't have what you need. She might
Mm-hmm.
be like, I don't have $1,000,000. What do you need help with? And I'm like, I'm really hungry. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
Venmo you $50 for groceries, or I'll
Mm-hmm.
Grubhub food to you. That we have these options that we can
Yeah.
work with our supports, so that we're not like, oh, Anna doesn't have $1,000,000. She doesn't love me. She doesn't care for me. Being like, because we do that. Oh, I needed Anna to talk to and she wasn't there
Yeah.
because she didn't have what I needed in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it is very hard too because sometimes you can almost beg someone for, you know, the $1,000,000 or for something that you need, and um if you don't get it, it does alter that relationship indefinitely. So, and that's normal. If you're going through it, obviously you can tell by my voice, I've been through it. Um, it happens, and you can't always expect other people to be who you want them to be.
And thank you for sharing the emotion that's coming up. And we could see that with author too. Like, he needs these people to be who he needs them to be, like the guy who he kills.
Yeah.
He thought he was a friend. He thought he was a
Mm-hmm.
support, even though, and Anna, you can agree or maybe disagree. I thought the guy was a jerk from the beginning. In
Yeah,
the
he's just
locker
being,
room, yeah, I
ugh.
was like, you're
Yeah.
acting like a friend, but you're actually one of those
Mm-hmm.
bully friends, one of those friends that
That aren't
we're
really.
friends, but yeah,
Yeah.
I really don't care. Because if he was a
Mm-hmm.
good friend, he would have said, I did give author the gun. I was really concerned
Exactly.
about his
He would
safety
have
instead
fussed.
of,
Yeah. But he didn't.
yeah.
He's like, well, I don't know, and what a jerk.
Yeah, he was, and that poor author just wants to be loved so much that even in these interactions, when somebody is mean nice,
Hmm.
that he doesn't even see it because he's so
Yeah.
starving for
Mhm.
that companionship, that camaraderie that
Yeah.
he accepts. And how often do we as people, again, this movie just reflects all these dynamics we have in our daily life, where if I'm starving for friendship, I
Yeah.
will accept the mean, nice friend
Mhm.
because having
Because
a
I need
friend,
yeah,
mhm,
totally. Yeah, and
yeah,
that's once once again, what Margaret was saying a few moments ago, that's why it is important to have the safe people in your life, the ones that you can ask to be there and who will come back and say, "You know what? I'm having the worst day ever, but let's get breakfast tomorrow and talk about what's going on," or whatever is the case. And I know for me, I have kind of my core group of besties and my little ghoul gang, if any of you are listening. Um, but there are just a few of us, and we'll say, like, "How's everybody doing today? I have this going on. Can I talk about it?" Or whatever it is. Um, and then we do. And, if we call each other individually or meet up individually or whatever, like, it's all cool because we've all known each other for different periods of time. We kind of have an idea of what triggers the others, what doesn't, things that we've been through already, things that we're going through, that kind of stuff. And it's just so important to have friends like that, who you really can talk about anything with and not fear being judged. And also friends that will be honest with you and tell you whether or not they're in a position to provide that support.
and author does not have any of those friends. He doesn't
Mhm.
have his ride or dies. He doesn't have those people.
No.
I used to have, we've lost just life. We used to work together and we were there for each other in one way, actually, maybe inappropriate out of context. But if we text one, the other one would be like, I have a shovel, kind of saying,
Yes.
like, I got your back, whatever you
Right.
need, like, I'm
Yeah.
here for you. And taken out of context, people like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, like you're having homicidal thoughts. No, it was that whatever you have to say,
Mhm.
I'm ready. I've got you. And that would always be so nice. I'm
Mhm.
having a day. Do you need my shovel? Kind of sort of way of being like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm here. And author doesn't have any of those ride or die, I got a shovel
Mhm.
kind of people. He's just
Yeah.
on his own. So then he starts to fantasize
Mhm.
about having that person in his neighbor.
Yeah, and that's heartbreaking because, and when I first thought, I was like, "Oh my god, they've connected," and, it's so happy, and then I realized, no, it was his escapism, and it just makes me so sad. Like, oh, poor Arthur.
I
But I am
know, I was the
excited for
same
the
way.
sequel because, Lady Gaga is playing Harley Quinn, and I cannot wait. Apparently it comes out on October 4th, 2024, from what I just read. So get yourselves ready, everybody.
Oh,
But
I am so excited. We're
yeah.
gonna have to do a cast about that. One of,
Mhm.
I digress here, Folly I Do. One of my favorite mental health premises, which is the madness of two. And so this premise that if one of us is insane or mad, that our partner, the people closest to us, siblings, can
Mhm.
actually have that. So it's like one person, a partner schizophrenic, and so then the other partner becomes schizophrenic, not because that other person is schizophrenic, but because they share the madness. And I just find that
Mhm.
so fascinating of a topic of how, and we could go into connection,
Yeah.
how so badly we want to connect. And so then
Mhm.
what is another way to
Yeah.
connect but through madness?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I mean, I think I would argue in some ways too, if we look at the storyline from like Suicide Squad and those the Jared Leto and oh my gosh, I love the
Margot Robbie.
Margot Robbie. I can't forget who she is. But if we look at their characters, I think that part of Harley, well, she's the doctor first, but part of Harley Quinn's draw into this particular Joker character is her empathy towards him, but also I feel like they connect on a very deep, unspoken level. So it's almost just like a phenomena that's happening that we're watching.
Yes. And how author so desperately wants that, right?
Yeah.
That somebody that just has empathy. That's why he
Hmm.
fantasizes about the neighbor. And in the
Yeah.
beginning, like Anna was saying, you're like, yes, somebody who empathizes for him, somebody who gets him,
Hmm.
somebody who, that elevator, right? Where she
Yeah.
just puts the gun to her head. And he's like,
Yeah.
somebody gets me. Like, there's somebody
Hmm.
that's like down and out like me. We're in the
Yeah.
trenches. She's got a sense of humor. And you're like, yeah,
Hmm.
he's met somebody that can empathize and he can
Yeah.
empathize. And then
And then boom.
sadly that,
Well, and
yeah.
the thing is too, I think that the fact that she is a doting, caring, loving mother
Mhm.
is something that isn't really touched on a lot in the film, but when I reflect, I'm like, that has to be part of the reason Arthur was attracted to her because of what he grew up with.
Oh, yeah, that she was a loving, supporting
Hmm.
mother.
And he's been, you know, like you said, groomed to take care of his mother. And you know, how long has he been the parent in this relationship? I would venture to say quite some time.
That's what I was going to say. The draw is that here's a loving mother that is
Mhm.
loving and mothering her child, and not where author has to be the parent and
Mhm.
love and nurture his mother, which is
Yeah.
really heartbreaking for him. And even going with Folly Ado, we can see how his mom tries to pull Arthur into
Yeah.
her fantasy world. Like, she's convinced that Arthur, what, no, Bruce Wayne's dad
Thomas Wayne.
is, yeah,
Yeah.
Thomas Wayne is Arthur's
Yeah.
father, and how she's trying to convince him too of
And then poor
this
Arthur
fantasy.
goes and confronts him. And, you know, Thomas Wayne is super insensitive. He's basically like, that crazy old coot, you know, she's not anything to me. We fired her. She was nuts and this and that. Although in this storyline, I am convinced that they did have an affair. Um, because nobody's going to believe her. So if you're going to screw around with somebody, who better than somebody who's attractive that no one's going to believe, right? From this rich, elitist, privileged perspective. Once again, going back to the privilege theory, well, they'll believe me. They'll never believe her.
And that makes more sense, because even like when author sees his adoption papers, I was
Hmm.
like, she is mentally ill
Yeah.
and she's given a child
Hmm.
unless she was declared sane or fit. Like, where again did the system
Yeah.
fail? I like, if she was good, yes,
Mhm.
give her a baby. But nowhere in her file did it seem like she was mentally competent
Right.
to take care of a baby, then,
Hmm.
which makes you wonder. Those adoption papers made me think maybe,
Forged.
right, there was an affair. The
Hmm.
baby's taken because she's mentally ill.
Yep.
We know our systems often, you jump through all these
Hmm.
hoops. And if you're lucky, you get your child back. And then so maybe the adoption was just, okay, here's this formality since we
Yeah.
technically took your child back from you. And so now we're legally. Because I thought, I don't know, but I'm like, that's weird. If she was
Yeah.
mentally ill in a psych hospital, how is she adopting a child?
Hmm. Right. And once again, like, hypothetically speaking, she had the affair with Thomas Wayne
Mhm.
to get rid of her.
Yeah.
He could have easily facilitated that as well.
And that makes Joker Batman interactions, I think, so
Mhm.
much more beautiful if we see them as like half siblings.
Yeah.
And Anne is way more into comics with me. I will say that one
Mhm.
that I did read was the end of like the Joker and Batman, and just how I would argue there is a platonic love affair between these
Oh,
two
there always
men.
is.
They
Yeah.
need each other.
Yeah, there always is. I mean, it's how, you know, the moon needs the night sky.
Mhm.
It really is. And, you know, for me, I really was into the Dark Horse series for a long time, and that just can blow your mind. Just a complete different perspective, which I enjoy quite a bit. Um, but yeah, I also kind of have this theory about the entire universe as well. Um, so I watched the film,
Mhm.
and my immediate reaction when it was over, I turned to the person I saw it with and I said, I think the entire DC universe is one of Arthur's hallucinations, and it's part of his magical thinking.
Ooh, that just flips everything. That just takes everything and gives it a whole new context.
Yeah. So I know that's a very controversial idea and statement, but it was my reaction and I'll own it. And, that's okay.
Yes, that I love that. We might just have to have a whole cast exploring if the DC universe is really an author's brain and how that switches thing. There's I cannot think of this movie. I will have to post it later. There's a whole movie about a guy who's in a coma, but you don't realize he's in a coma because he has this whole fantasy world that is happening while he's in the hospital.
Is it the heart surgery one?
I don't
With James
remember what he goes.
Franco, and he has to have open heart surgery, and he can feel everything because he's having a reaction to the anesthesia, but he's out. No? Okay.
No, it is. I have to text my kiddo. It's one of her favorite. Sublime. That's what it's called. Sublime. Okay. It's, yeah, we might have to do a cast on that one. That one's really good.
I need to see that.
Yes. So, we could talk about Joker all day long. Anna, who do you most relate to in this movie?
Golly. That's a really good question. I empathize most with Arthur, of course. But I think I most relate to the girl on the train. Minding your own business. Something happens by someone higher in society than you. And you luck out because there's an unexpected, unforeseen hero that comes to your rescue, yet you're still scared to do anything about it. And I think I can see through her eyes the most in the film. What about you, Margaret?
Ooh, wow. Thank you. That was such a deep answer. Thank you. I'm gonna have to go with the little girl. His love interest little girl, just kind of trying to get through the world. I really just love that, like, she still has this childlike innocence, so she's really trying to still see the good in the world, which I feel like I so often am always trying to see the world from more of an innocent perspective than a jaded perspective.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's nice too for children because you can see it through that perspective. I think as we become adults, we lose that, and sometimes when you try to see the best in people, it's almost perceived as a little bit Pollyanna-ish. Because you're an adult. You should think this way or you should behave that way. And there's nothing wrong with trying to see the best in other people.
Yes, I agree. Anything else you want to touch on about the Joker?
Well, if you've made it this far in the cast and you haven't seen the movie yet, please see it. We will definitely, as Margaret said, be doing a cast after the sequel comes out, which, as far as I know, this is subject to change, but when I Googled it, it said the 4th of October, 2024. So, very, very excited for that. And I would just like to, thank everyone for listening. This sounds super bizarre, but Joaquin Phoenix, if you ever come across our cast, thank you so much for your thoughtful, caring, and respectful portrayal of this character as well.
Yes, I agree. Thank you, Joaquin. Thank you, listeners. Yes, and feel free, comment, share, hit us up on our Instagram or here. Share your thoughts about the movie or anything else.
Yep. Well, I think that's it for now. Why don't you guys go ahead and pop your red noses back on and scoot in those big old shoes on to the next episode. And until then, we'll be trying to creep it real for you. See you next time.
See you next time.